So we were in a three-part series for the last 2 weeks, and today is the final lesson from the life in the book of Ruth. If you have your Bibles with you, please turn to Ruth chapter 2. We're going to be going to Ruth chapter 2, starting in verse 8. The words are going to be on your screen too. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, do not go glean in another field, or leave this one." Now we know that we've been talking about Ruth and Boaz for the last 2 weeks, and this is just the custom of how people talked in those days, and Ruth was considerably younger than Boaz. And so Boaz says, "Do not go to glean another field, or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men to not touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law, since the death of your husband, has been fully told to me. And how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before. And the Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." And then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." And at mealtime Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread, and dip your morsel in the wine." And so she sat down beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. And when she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her, and also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her." The book of Ruth is one of the most beautiful books in the Bible. Only 4 chapters in my Bible, only 4 pages, but there's so much that you can learn from the book of Ruth. And just that image that we just saw, where Ruth is sitting with Boaz and all his servants, sitting at his table, knowing that she was a foreigner, knowing that she did not deserve it or earn it in any kind of way, is just a reflection to us what we know happens in the New Testament, where God welcomes all of us strangers, all of us who are away from Him, who are far from Him, and He brings us to His table. What a beautiful image is this, that Ruth is sitting on Boaz's table. And what I wanted to call this message tonight is, I will wait. The first one was, I will stay. The second one was, bitter or better. And this one, we're going to call it, I will wait. And we talked about this, we talked about Naomi, we talked about Ruth, and tonight I wanted to talk about Boaz a little bit. And all the men who in here and probably online are going, "Well, I'm not looking for a Boaz. What is in it for me?" Well, there's a lot in here for us men, for all of us guys, and I'm going to try to leave with you as much as I can. But this is going to be a rule book for all the single ladies, for what you need to look for in a man. How to find the right significant other, and a guideline for the men, for what we need to be, for what we need to strive to be. And I believe all of us can be good leaders of our families. All of us can be better husbands. No one's perfect. All of us have room for improvement. And in Boaz, we find a rubric of what we need to be, what a good husband and a leader is supposed to look like, how to lead our families well. And in this time, we know what is happening in the life of Ruth so far. We've heard in the last 2 messages that a famine has come in Israel, and Ruth was nowhere in sight. This happens long before Ruth was born. Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, were living in the land of Israel, in Judah, and a famine comes in the period of the judges. There's no king in Israel, and people are doing whatever they want, and there's a famine that arises in the land, and which forces Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons to leave their home country, to leave their land, to leave their house behind, and to go to a place they are not familiar with, to go to a nation that they're not familiar with, considered to be an enemy territory called Moab. And that's where they start to live. They leave Bethlehem, their home, Bethlehem, which is ironically called in Hebrew the house of bread, now has no bread left in the house of bread. And so they have to go find food somewhere else. And that's where they meet Ruth. When they are living in Moab, that's where they find Ruth the Moabite. She comes into their life. And tragedy strikes, and we're not told what happens, but we're told that Naomi loses her husband, and she loses her 2 sons, which means Naomi not only loses her husband, she also loses her 2 sons, which means that Ruth also loses her husband. And after they have lost everything, they find out that the famine in Israel is over, and they have nothing left in Moab anymore. So Naomi decides to come back, and she tells Ruth and her other daughter-in-law, and she tells them, there's nothing left for me here. There's nothing left for you. You need to go back to your families. I'm going to go back to Israel. I'm going to go back to my home. But you need to go back to your families. You need to go back to your friends. You still have people where you came from. I have no one and I have nothing. But Ruth tells her, I'm going to stay with you. I will stay. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. I'm not leaving you behind. It's not just about my survival. I want to make sure that you survive. That I'm not going to leave you, another woman, behind. I'm going to be with you. And we're going to try to move on together. And in a time, in a period of history where women are not educated, where they're considered second-grade citizens, where they're considered never be independent, not even allowed to speak in public. They were always thought to be weak, and they always needed a man to survive in a society like that. Ruth comes along and tells us that that is not the norm. She comes and she speaks to us wherever we are in our lives right now. She will speak to you today, no matter where you are in life. And the first thing that speaks to me when I read this passage, and when you read the book of Ruth, is that Ruth was not looking for another man. As soon as Ruth comes to Israel, she could have done what her other sister-in-law did. Go and find another man, go and find another family and start a whole new life. Leave her troubles behind, start fresh. But Ruth instead chooses to go to work. She goes and starts to pick the grains in the field, whatever she could to find food so that she could survive and so that Naomi, her mother-in-law, would have food to eat. And she did not look for a man. She did not look for another human being to put her hopes in. She gave her life to God. She said to Naomi, your God is going to be my God. And she really had to trust only Him for protection. She only had to trust Him for provision because she was a foreigner. She didn't know anybody there. To go out in the fields alone as a woman in those days, especially with the trauma that she was carrying within her, she definitely did trust in Him to provide for her so she would not return home empty-handed. I don't think she was looking for any man. Forget about Boaz. He wasn't even in the picture. She was only focused on moving on. She wanted to survive, but she also didn't want to put her life in the hands of another person, of another human being. How many of us know that when you sometimes put your faith in other people, that you can be disappointed? Sometimes when you trust other people and put your faith in another human being, they're also just like you, a human being. Just like we are broken, just like we are sinful, people can disappoint us. So she puts her faith in the place where she knows will never get broken again, will never get damaged. She puts her hope, she puts her faith in Yahweh, God of Israel. And all she wanted to do was move forward, not be defined by her sadness, and not be defined by her brokenness, and not be defined by what happened to her, and her losses, and the void that was left in her life. She was trusting God, the God that she had just given her life to. These were uncertain times for her life, and I know that all of us go through uncertain times, uncertain periods in our life. Sometimes I'm waiting on something to happen because I really don't know. Sometimes, what even am I waiting for? But I know that my life is not the way I want it to look right now. There's periods of uncertainties. There are things going on in my life that I cannot control. There are things happening in my life that are completely out of my control. And these are uncertain times. And when you're going through a period of uncertainty, sometimes all we can do is just wait. But even just waiting is not enough. I've asked myself a lot of times, what are you waiting on? What's going on in your life? Why are you feeling this way? What are you waiting on? And my response to myself is, I don't know. I just hope sometime soon things will get better, that I would stop feeling this way. And I can't just I have horrible ADHD, so I can't just sit still. Even though I'm waiting, I always have to be doing something. I need to be doing something. So even in my period of waiting, I need to be doing something. You can't change the economy. You can't change the housing market. You can't change the heart of your teenager. You can't even change the mind of your boss. So all you can do in those times is just do what is in front of you, even in your period of waiting. And so Ruth went to work as she was waiting on God. She did not put her hopes in another person. She was waiting on Him. She put her faith in Him. And waiting is a time in our lives that God uses very well, that God uses very strategically to teach us not only patience, but it builds character. Waiting is a very essential time in our lives. God grows you in the waiting. He changes you. He renews you in your waiting. See, don't go looking for Boaz. Boaz will come and find you. And for the men, again, who are thinking, I'm not looking for a Boaz. Well, Boaz represents a lot more than just another person. For us, Boaz can mean opportunity. Something that you've been waiting for a long time. Something that you desperately need. And you've been rushing everywhere, trying to find it everywhere, trying to find that thing everywhere. It could be a promotion. It could be purpose. It could be a partner, a life partner. But sometimes we have to wait on Boaz. And I do not understand that waiting period very well. I'm one of the most impatient people that I know. Anything that I want it quickly. And I am so impatient to the point where I will literally pay a lot more extra money just to get my delivery one day quicker. I will pay Amazon Prime an extra $30, $40 to just bring my package one day quickly. If I could just wait one more day, I wouldn't be paying all that extra money. But I cannot wait. I want my muscles to grow faster. I want my problems to go away quickly. Something that I struggle with is waiting. I even drive like a maniac. I was talking about my speeding ticket last week. And people were laughing at me because I got pulled over going 20 over. And that's low for me. I drive like a maniac because I want to get to my destination faster. And I'm working on it. Lauren just elbows me every time I go over the speed limit. And I think I've grown callous wherever she elbows me, so it doesn't hurt anymore. But every good thing takes time. Every good thing takes time. Have you ever, in your life, had wanted something really, really badly, really, really quickly, that when you finally got to it, when you finally achieved it, it wasn't as fulfilling as you thought it was going to be? Has that ever happened to you? Because I want to talk to you about Ruth, but I can't just talk about Ruth because another woman comes to my mind when I was thinking about this message this week. I couldn't get this thought out of my mind. Ruth is a woman that we find in the Old Testament, but there was another woman that is found in the New Testament that has a similar life experience as Ruth, that had similar kinds of problems. I'm not going to go into the scripture. I can just tell you really quickly what was going on in John chapter 4 when Jesus meets this woman from Samaria. Lots and lots and lots of things going on in her life. Bad things. Number one, she was a Samaritan. And the Bible tells us in John chapter 4 that Jesus had to go through Samaria. Samaria was a place that was really a place that Jews did not like to go. They would literally travel a couple extra days to go around Samaria when they could have gone straight through it. But because they despised Samaria so much, they went around it. They considered Samaritans to be half-breeds because the Samaritans once used to be a part of their people, but because they chose to worship other gods, because they chose to intermarry with other nations, they gave themselves up to other gods. And so the Jews hated them, they despised them. And the Bible tells us Jesus had to go through Samaria. When most Jews would avoid going through Samaria, Jesus went to Samaria looking for this woman. And she was just sitting. Well, not sitting, she was coming up to this well in the middle of the day. Most women in those days went to go to their wells to draw water in the morning or in the evening, in the cool of the day. And they would usually go in groups. That's what they would do. And this woman goes to draw water in the middle of the day, when it's the hottest throughout the day. The hottest time of the day. Why? Because she wanted to avoid the other women, because her life did not look the way other people's lives did, or at least other people pretended to be. She had gone through tremendous loss. She had had 5 husbands. 5 husbands, and she was living with another man who was not her husband. 5 husbands. I've heard people complain about the one they got. To deal with 5? The similarities between her and Ruth: the Samaritan woman was a Gentile. Ruth was a Gentile. Ruth was accepted by God. And we know in the story that the Samaritan woman is accepted by Jesus. Ruth had no one, neither did the Samaritan woman. Ruth was redeemed by Boaz, just like the Samaritan woman was redeemed by Jesus. Ruth was not looking for another man. Neither was the Samaritan woman. In fact, if you read John chapter 4 and you read the story, you'll find out that she did not have a very good opinion of men. She had been around so many men. And when Jesus talks to her, she comes up to the well and Jesus asks her, "Hey, can you give me a drink?" And she says, "Why are you, a Jew, talking to me, a Samaritan? I'm a Samaritan, the people that you despise, and on top of that, I'm a woman. Why are you talking to me?" You can see the attitude in her tone when she's talking to Jesus, because she did not have a very good opinion of men, because men had used her like objects. And she probably had her self-worth, and she only looked at herself just like an object. And something that I do not like about this story, whenever it is preached, I've heard it preached so many times where people say this woman had a loose character, this woman had just a bad character, she just couldn't be straight, she just couldn't be nice, she just couldn't be a righteous woman. Well, we don't know. The Bible is very specific. We do not get her background. We do not know what the condition of her heart was. We do not know what the condition of her life was. We don't know her past. We don't know why she had 5 husbands. We don't know why she kept trusting these men. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have a father figure growing up. Maybe the men that she did have in her life when she was little weren't good to her. Maybe she was left with a void that she was trying to fill with the next person she could find. The current one, the current person that she was with, he would sleep with her, but he would not marry her. All that she knew were men who were not good to her. She was damaged goods for them. Not good enough to be anyone's wife, but good enough to just give all these sick, dishonorable, selfish men a good time. These men always got what they wanted, but she always lacked what she needed. She had never been loved. She didn't have any children. She didn't have the joy that other women in those days had. And she wasn't asking for much, but she was never satisfied. And she kept going from one man to the next man to the next man. When one relationship didn't work out, she would rush to the next one. When that one didn't work out, she would rush to the next one. Never settled, never satisfied. And a lot of times, I believe in my life, I've seen that happen way too many times. How many times do we rush into things because we think that they look appealing, that they will help our lives, they will help our lives get better, they will help our careers. They look like they're going to be good, but when you finally get there, you find out that the grass is not really that much greener on the other side. And you wish you wouldn't have wasted so much time, and you wish you wouldn't have so much, you would have wasted so much energy into people that were only in your life for a season, that were only in your life to use you, to use your connections and take advantage of you. How many times have you rushed into relationships and friendships and you gave your trust to them before they earned it? How many times do we Have we seen people rush to people because of the way they look? Oh, she's cute. Oh, he's cute. And then, a few weeks, a few months, maybe a few years later, you find out that they did not appear on the inside the way they appeared on the outside. That they were nothing what they presented themselves to be. Completely different on the inside what they looked like on the outside. I was listening to a comedian the other day, and he was a fellow Indian comedian, and he was talking about his family, and he was talking about his wife, and he was talking about his children, and he used this phrase that I thought was hilarious. He said, my ex-wife is a very beautiful woman on the outside. He made sure to specify that she was beautiful on the outside. And that's why he married her. But then when he finally married her, he found out that appearances aren't everything. And see, when we go out rushing to find something that would satisfy you, when you're trying to fill a void, when we think that the next person will satisfy this need, whatever we're going after, the diplomas are going to satisfy the need, the promotions are going to satisfy the need, all the highs will satisfy the need, all the accomplishments will satisfy the need. We find out when you get there, it's not what you thought it was going to be. Because we were created by God with an inherent need for Him that nothing else in this world will satisfy. There's like one theologian said, there's a God-shaped hole in your heart that nothing else can fill, only Him. And I have literally seen people get married, young people get married because they think that the problem of lust is going to go away. The fire within them, this sexual fire within them, it needs to die. And as soon as we get married, it'll go away. The lust will go away. Now that I'm married, guess what? It doesn't. Guess what? You were trying to fix a problem, and now you create another problem. The lust is still there. The thoughts are still there. And it didn't satisfy. It was only created more thirst. It only created more emptiness. See, growing up in India, something that you learn to love is a cold glass of water in the middle of a hot day. And when it's 125 degrees outside, and you've just worked out in the fields, or you're coming back from school, or you're about to go and play a game with your friends when you're done, and you come home, the first thing that you run for is a cold glass of water. It's a commodity, a cold glass of water. Because in India, we don't have these fancy refrigerators where you get cold water from the fridge. No, you have to fill the water in water bottles, and then you have to put them in refrigerators to cool them. And my mom would always gripe at me. Always. Hey, you just left the refrigerator door open. Who's going to fill the bottles? If you want cold water, fill it in and put it in the fridge. Don't just be a consumer. You like the cold water, but then you're never going to go and fill it back in. And nothing satisfies you when you are thirsty, like a cold cup of water. Coca-Cola would work too, but nothing satisfies you like a cold cup of water. And I love water. I don't drink it as much as I should, as much as I need to, but I love water. I think it tastes great, but I know some people who hate the taste of water. They will go through great lengths just to avoid drinking water. I know a guy who hasn't had a cup of water in 2 decades, 20 years. All he would drink is Dr. Pepper. 2 decades, all he would drink is Dr. Pepper. And one time I asked him, how do you get your water? And he goes, well, there's water in Dr. Pepper. Okay, I understand that there might be a little bit of water that might satisfy you for a little bit, but guess what else you were putting in your body? The excess amount of sugar, and then you wonder why you have headaches all day, all the time. And you wonder, Katie's laughing at me. You know I'm right. And you wonder, you're giving your body what it doesn't really need, what doesn't really satisfy. What you need is water. And it's interesting because the Samaritan woman came to the well looking for water, to draw water. Because she was thirsty, and she was thirsty in more ways than just physical thirst. She had not been satisfied. She had not felt loved. She hasn't felt good in years. She was thirsty in so many ways, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. She was thirsty. And the most ironic fact is the fact that she comes to draw water, but she doesn't really realize that she is a well herself. She has been satisfying all these other men. They would come to her to quench their thirst. She was a well for them. But every time she would come to the water, every time she would come to the well, she would always leave thirsty. That's why she had to keep coming back, getting more water. And all these men, she was a well for them, because they would continue to draw whatever they can from her every time. They took all her joy, they took all her peace, they took all her innocence, and she was left like a shell of a person. And see, we touched on it a few weeks ago, but I believe that a lot of people here, a lot of women, you don't really need to be in Ruth's situation or the Samaritan woman's situation. You don't really need to lose a husband to realize what it feels like to not have a good man's influence in your life. Some of you didn't grow up with fathers. Some of you grew up without fathers. Some of you grew up with fathers that didn't treat you the way you deserve to be treated, like a daughter should be treated. And my wife knows that. What it feels like to live with the void that comes from not having a father. And some of you have only known men that did not value you. I've known women who have been abused, manipulated, taken advantage of by evil men who only wanted to use you like objects and would throw you away when they were done with you. All they do is just draw more water, draw more water, treat you like a well, draw more water. And the wrong guy will make you dry and will keep making you drier and drier and drier. The wrong person will make you dry. See, as we wait for Boaz, a lot of times we end up finding something that was not Boaz. It only hurts us, and it only breaks us, it only makes our hearts worse. It only makes us more thirsty. And Boaz also has some other cousins that sometimes we can run into. We talked about it a few weeks ago. I wanted to bring up the picture again so you can see that Boaz is not the only person that we can get involved with. Sometimes in our rush, and sometimes in our impatience to find someone else, sometimes in our impatience to find the next person, we can run into these other relatives from Boaz. So while you're waiting on your Boaz, don't settle for any of his relatives. Don't settle for a broke ass. Don't settle for a lying ass. Don't settle for a cheating ass, drunk ass, cheap ass, locked up ass, good for nothing ass, and especially his third cousin beating your ass. As you're waiting on your Boaz, make sure he respects your ass. And I know that some of you are living with your Boaz. Some of you know exactly what it feels like to live with Boaz. But all of us still need water. All of us need a source. And I believe that some of us have been a source for someone else. Have you been a well for someone else? Just waiting to be filled, but all you have experienced is people drawing from you. You're waiting for someone to pour in, but you haven't really felt what it feels like. And it doesn't even need to be about another man or a woman. It doesn't even need to be about something like that. All of us can go through a season of dryness. All of us can go through times when you will feel dry, that you can be there for everybody else in your life, but the moment you need someone, no one is to be seen. As a wife and a mother, do you feel tired sometimes? And I know you're grateful for your family and you will lay down your lives for them. But does it ever feel like life is moving quicker than your ability to keep up with it? Summer's already over. in just a couple of days, they'll be lighting that tree again. Time for gifts, time for Thanksgiving, all these things is happening way too quick. And you are trying to water everyone else, but you yourself are running dry. And now you need Jesus more than ever to quench your thirst so you can keep it together. She was a well for all these other people in her life, and she was never satisfied until now, because now comes Jesus. In comes Jesus, and he tells her that the things that you have done that other people don't accept you for, it doesn't matter what they don't, it doesn't matter if they don't accept you. It doesn't matter if they don't love you, because I am here and I will love you. You keep going to this well, you keep drawing more water, and you have to keep coming back in because you're thirsty and you're tired. But I will give you water that will never make you thirsty again. I will give you living water. Do you see my shirt? It says, enjoy Jesus Christ and thou shalt never thirst. It was a gift from my wife. And it literally came 2 days ago. Coincidence? Maybe. Because I didn't tell her what I was going to talk about. But this woman sees what Jesus does for her, how he treats her. And in comes Jesus, brings in living water. This man who literally knows everything she has ever done and still loves her. When all she has known is other people that don't know anything about her life, don't know what she went through, don't know how she feels every day, know nothing about her, but only treat her with contempt and hatred and disgust. And she jumps up and down. She leaves her water jar behind and she runs to the village. And she goes to, the Bible tells us she goes to the men because she knows these men. And she goes to them and she tells them, come see a man. See what a man is supposed to look like. See how a man is supposed to treat a woman. See what a good man does. Let me show you what a real man looks like. What a real man sounds like. How a real man treats a woman. How a real father treats his child. How a real husband treats his wife. Like Jesus loved the church. See, Boaz is a type of Christ in the Old Testament. He redeems Ruth. He is an image of what is to come in the New Testament. He comes to redeem Ruth. And I wanted to give you 4 qualities that you can look for in your Boaz. Every man needs to have these 4 qualities. All of us men need to have these qualities. If we want to be better husbands, if we want to be better fathers, if we want to be better leaders of our families. Number 1, Boaz wanted to be her well. He did not look at Ruth as a well. He did not look at Ruth as someone who he can take advantage of, someone he can use. He wanted to satisfy her thirst. He saw that she was thirsty, and he went out of her way to pour in whatever he could. She was not a means to satisfy his thirst. He saw her thirst and he became a well for her. He wanted to pour in because real men pour in. Number 2, he provided for her. He protected her. See, money is not all we need. Ruth felt safe in his presence. She felt comfortable in his presence. She felt peace in his presence. She felt loved in his presence. And he provided for her more than the law required. We talked about last week how gleaning was the process where when someone is harvesting their field, they're supposed to leave a corner of their field so that the poor and the foreigners and the widows, everything that Ruth qualifies for, would be able to come and get the grain. But Boaz, as we read, left her far more than what he was required to give. Because real men pour in. Selfless, he was selfless. How many truly selfless people do we know? Number 3, he appreciated her efforts. He appreciated everything that Ruth was doing, not only for Naomi, but also how hard she was working. And I know a lot of times I do not do a very good job of just appreciating my wife with all the work that she does. And I know that a lot of times we forget the fact that a mother in the house is not only managing her house, but she's also working, and she's also providing for the family, and she's also cooking for the family, and she's also cleaning the house. A lot of times we just do not appreciate what godly women do every single day. Number 4, he asked for nothing in return. He was not looking for a payback. He wasn't looking for anything from Ruth. How many truly selfless people do you know that will do you a favor, but then expect something in return? Is that really a favor? Is that really a gift when you are expecting a gift back in return? See, everything that Boaz has done for Ruth, God has done for all of us. Every single thing that you could look for in a man, you have already got in Jesus, who's the perfect Father, who's the perfect God. Christ has done the same for us. He is the true Redeemer. And especially after everything he's done for you, after he has given his life for you, after he has shed his blood for you, after the fact that his blood covers you, we need to be more protective of who we give our hearts to. We need to be more protective. You are worth so much more. Stop wasting your time. Whoever's listening online, stop wasting your time over someone who is not already a Boaz when you meet them. The Bible talks about being equally yoked. It is not your job to make someone a Boaz. He will already be one. Boaz was already a worshiper. He was seeking God. He was doing his part. Boaz didn't just stay at home and let his servants do the work. The reason he met Ruth was because he was working alongside his servants, because he was not just chilling at home. Boaz was doing his part. And how many times have I heard people say, especially women, I thought I could fix him, that's why I got into a relationship with him. Ladies, it's not your job to fix him. I thought I could fix him. Do you not have enough on your plate? Do you not have enough in your life that needs to be fixed? That you have to worry about someone else's responsibility that God did not give you? I travel a lot on the airplanes. I've traveled a lot going to India back and forth. And the one thing they tell everybody in every flight is put on your oxygen mask before you help someone else. I think it's time to put your oxygen mask. Now, work on you. Work on yourself just like Ruth was doing. Don't let loneliness, don't let impatience make you make a choice that you one day will regret because you couldn't wait. And not only just finding your Boaz. I'm not just talking about that. Even with opportunities, don't just rush into something just because you hate where you are right now. Sometimes we have to wait and work towards it. When I say wait on God, I'm not asking you to just stop doing whatever you're doing. Don't mistake waiting for just sitting around and doing nothing. We think of sitting and waiting like we're waiting for an oil change to be done and you're waiting in your car. Like you're waiting in a doctor's office and waiting on the receptionist to call your name. I'm not talking about that kind of waiting. I'm not even talking about the waiting to be recognized, waiting on your Boaz, waiting on your marriage to get better. I'm not talking about any of that. We think waiting means not doing anything until we're told what to do. See, that is not the idea of waiting for God, waiting on Him. Because even if you are waiting on Him, God expects you to do what He has placed in front of you in that moment. He will never leave you without a task. He will never leave you without something to do. He will always place you in a place of need. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just get up and go to work and do your job. And keep going, even if it feels like nothing is happening. Because God is working behind the scenes. When God tells you to wait, when I tell you to wait, I'm not telling you to just relax and go take a nap. No. But what I am saying is stop thrashing around like a fish out of water, trying to fix things that you have no ability to fix. Can a broken heart be mended in one date? No. Can a drug addict beat his addictions in one day? No. So why do we stop trying? Did Ruth fix her pain and start feeling better the moment she went to work? No. But she did anyway. She went to work. And yes, you can, from now on, you can start believing this. You are working and you are waiting. Waiting for him to do what only he can. You can still be working and God will do his part. His time, in his time. Because we know that his timing is better. But we need to be consumed in whatever he has placed before you today. Even in your waiting, he's given you things to do. Ruth was consumed in what she had to do. Sometimes people say, well, I don't really know what to do in this moment. I don't even know what to do in this time period that I'm going through. It's so uncertain. I don't know what to do. I don't know what God wants from me. Well, are we doing what he has placed right in front of us? Right now? What we're supposed to be doing? The clearest example about this, in my mind, comes from David. As we end, I'm going to bring up King David. See, when David became king of Israel, before he became king of Israel, he had no idea that he was going to be king. He wasn't even brought up in the lineup because nobody thought that David was going to be the king. He didn't know. He wasn't training to be a king. He wasn't training to be a warrior. He wasn't preparing for the future because he didn't know that he was going to be king. But what he was doing was what God had placed right before him. He was a shepherd. He was protecting his flock. He was protecting his sheep. He was feeding his sheep. And he was doing that to the best of his abilities. He was protecting the sheep. He took on a bear. He tells King Saul when he's facing Goliath, when he's about to fight Goliath, he says, I have literally fought a lion and I have fought a bear when they came to take one of my father's sheep. And God enabled me to win that fight. See, when the time came for David to face Goliath, he wasn't the first thing bigger than him that he brought down. It's because David was doing what God placed in front of him. Same thing I ask you to do. The enemy might be trying to break your spirit. The enemy might be trying to confuse you. And he might be trying to put you in a season of confusion and depression and anxiety. Like he was with Ruth. Ruth had all the reason to just stay home, stay in bed, and not get out. Her life was miserable. Her life, in most people's eyes, was over. But the reason Ruth did not lose, but the reason Ruth did not die was because she was doing what God had placed in front of her. She found Boaz when she was in the field. And another thing, Boaz was also not looking for Ruth. She just happened to be in his field. Was it a coincidence? Maybe. Was it a coincidence? I don't know. But I believe that there are no coincidences with God. It's almost like he knows what he's doing. I believe there's no coincidences. I am a living example of that. How did a boy from India come all the way across the world, to the other side of the world, and meet someone in a little town called Elizabeth City, when I was already admitted to go to Los Angeles? I'm so glad I didn't. But how did that happen? You can call it a coincidence? Maybe. Did the shirt come in the right time, at the right moment? Thou shalt not thirst again? Maybe. Might be a coincidence. But I don't believe that there are any coincidences with God. And the only thing he has asked us to chase after, to be impatient about, to rush towards his kingdom, his will. I love that scripture in the Bible. Seek first his kingdom, and everything else will be added to you. A lot of preachers tell you about the things that will be added to you, but they forget about seek the kingdom. That's the only thing that we need to focus on. That's the only thing we need to be impatient about. That's the only thing we need to chase. And you don't have to go looking for Boaz. Boaz will find you. You don't have to go looking for God. God will find you. He did find you. He is here. You have enough evidence in your life. And so as we wait and as we work towards what God has called us to do, let's remember Let's remember Ruth. Let's remember Naomi. And if he was their God, if he came through for them, why wouldn't he do that for you?